All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Matt Saunders. I'm a community manager on the Cisco Learning Network, and I'll be hosting your webinar for you this webinar session. In today's session, we will be covering integrations with ISE with our presenters, Sergey Harutsky and Ruben Maia. But before we get started, I did want to share a couple of quick housekeeping notes with everyone. First of all, we have a lot of great content to cover today, so we've actually gone ahead and extended the live webinar for about 30 minutes to share some of the additional demos that we have prepared for everyone today. So we hope you enjoy the presentation. We understand if you need to go ahead and drop at the top of the hour, not to worry. The recording for today's full webinar will be made available over on the Cisco Learning Network. And as everyone exits the webinar today, you'll be redirected to the landing page where those recordings are hosted, and you'll also receive a follow-up email communication with a link to where the recordings are hosted as well. So not to worry, if you do need to leave early, we'll make sure the full recording is fully available. Also, a quick reminder that all of our presenters are currently working from home with the current situation and everyone working from home. So if we do happen to run into any technical issues today, please bear with us. We'll do our very best to resolve as quickly as possible, but sometimes working conditions and environments might vary while everyone's at home instead of the office. Let's see, if you happen to have any questions throughout the presentation today, we do ask that you feel free to post them as we go through the presentation. We'll also save some time for verbal Q&A. However, you're welcome to submit your questions as we proceed through the presentation. We just ask that you use the Q&A panel as opposed to the chat window to submit those questions. It does help make managing the flow of those questions a little bit easier. And let's see, if you happen to experience any audio issues during the live presentation, we recommend the toll-free call-in number, which I'll make sure to post in the chat again in just a few moments to make sure everyone has it. Typically, that will resolve any audio streaming issues that attendees might experience. At the very end of the webinar, you'll get a pop-up survey with a couple of questions about today's presentation, and we would appreciate it if you take just a moment to fill out that survey and share with us any thoughts or feedback about the presentation. It's greatly appreciated, and it really helps the presenters and develop their presentations further. Let's see here. Last, we'll also be launching a few poll questions throughout the presentation. When we're ready to launch those poll questions, we'll announce it live, and you'll also see a pop-up on the webinar event screen where you'll have an opportunity to submit your answers. And again, we'll greatly just appreciate your feedback there. And so let's see. With that, I'll make sure that we get the presenter of the ball. And Sergey, I'll go ahead and unmute you. And welcome, Sergey.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the session. So let's start our webinar with actually the first poll question. Which security products are deployed in your production network? So please use tab exploring window to select the choices, your answer. I hope this window already appeared.
Should be all set. Thank you, Sergey. That poll question is now open.
Okay. So for now, let's continue with the content. A couple of words about agenda. So the main topic is ISE integrations today for sure, but before that we will describe a bit ISE introduction. Then we'll go through our integrations, and in the end there will be a Q&A section. And as I mentioned before, move on to integrations itself. So let's do a quick intro on Cisco ISE itself. Cisco ISE is a policy management and control platform for wired, wireless, and VPN connections. Cisco ISE allows you to provide highly secure network access to users and devices. It helps you to gain visibility into what is going on your network, such as who is connected, which applications are installed and running, and much more. It also shares vital contextual data, such as user and device identities, threats, and vulnerabilities with integrated solutions from Cisco technology and its partners. So you can identify, contain, and remediate threats faster. Additionally, ISE provides a range of access control options, including downloadable access control lists, virtual LAN assignments, URL redirections, name ACLs, and security group ACLs, with our Cisco TrustSec technology. And for now, a couple of words about what is actually going on in cybersecurity nowadays, as defending our assets during, before, and after security event is very crucial. Because nowadays, in cybersecurity, with multiple security products and solutions to defend our assets from either reactive or proactive incidents, there are two ways to deal with it, the complex way and the simple one. And when I'm talking about complex way, let's imagine the situation when you protect your assets with different boxes, like top on the market according to performance, but they don't communicate between each other, don't share context. And basically, in order to understand what is going on your network, you need to jump from the console to console to check information on each box separately. When it comes to simple and faster and effective way, integration is the word we should think about, because integrated security architecture provides you automation and reduce complexity. So let's see how we can be in the second bucket with Cisco solutions, especially in this session, because our main discussion and talking point for today is what problems does ISE integration solve, and why do we need to care about it? So let's move on. Okay, let's talk about ISE integrations. Because talking about integration, we need to remember that Cisco ISE improves your operations and network defense capabilities with the user and device contextual data, access policies, and enforcement. And it provides you the following. First of all, automate the exchange of security information, move the right data into the right tools, and get answer faster from puzzling data. Second point is that ISE integrations allows you to quickly and easily make policy changes using a Cisco or partner technology. Contain threats anywhere on your premises or even cloud networks. Third point is that integrations allows you to automate and simplify your workflow. You can handle more investigations and avoid costs associated with breaches. Cisco ISE shares its wealth of contextual identity information and allows you and Cisco or partner technology to block network access. Cisco ISE actually works with more than 100 partner technologies. It can be enabler for multiple use cases, for instance, from cloud access security broker solutions to user behavior analysis. So the list of the partner technologies is constantly growing, and on the next slide, we prepare for you some examples, like kind of showcase of few that integrate and work seamlessly to achieve different use cases like policy management or threat intelligence, mobile device management, user management, and etc. On this link, which can be provided on the chat, I believe, you can find more information and details about this topic. And coming back to what is going on in cybersecurity nowadays, for now, unfortunately, with the developing of threats, no single tool can provide us complete security. And for that, often most companies rely on and deploy multiple tools, applications, or solutions in order to fix or solve such tasks like network segmentation, network visibility, perimeter security, or endpoint security. These are the most common and widely deployed solutions to secure nowadays on enterprise networks. So let's focus mostly on these four pillars and discuss what are the Cisco products out there for these solutions, how ISE acts as a policy plane or policy management tool for these solutions, and what value ISE brings in when it gets integrated with these solutions. And for now, I believe it's time to know the results of our first question, our first poll question. Matt, can you please provide us the results?
Definitely, Sergey. Thank you so much. So let's see. It looks like the majority of responses were definitely for ISE. So again, the question was, which security products are deployed in your production network? And so ISE
Mhm.
is the vast majority, with Firepower and GFW as the next option. And then from there, a bit of an even mix between AMP, Stealthwatch, and email and web security.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I believe for now it's time for our second poll question. Or yeah. So yes. Second poll question is how you contain a threat. I believe for now new web exponent should appear.
And I'll actually open that one up in just a moment. It looks like there's a little glitch
Okay.
in the preloading of that question. Actually, here we go. I'll get that open right now.
Okay, great. So how do you contain a threat? I believe yes, for now you should see the window and select your answer. And for now we can proceed with our content. And for now, let's talk about Stealthwatch because we would like to know what is going on in our network. But before talking about Stealthwatch and ISE integrations, a couple of words about Stealthwatch itself. So Cisco Stealthwatch provides you real-time situational awareness of all users, devices, and traffic on your network based on NetWall. Basically, three things can be accomplished through Stealthwatch by digesting the provided NetWall data, like monitor, detect, and analyze. With monitor, you can obtain comprehensive, scalable enterprise visibility and security context. With detect, you can detect network behavior anomalies like communication with the command and control centers, exploitation, data exfiltration, etc. With analyze, you will have ability to collect and analyze holistic network audit trace, so you can achieve faster root cause analysis. Overall, the Cisco Stealthwatch system collects and analyzes network from your routers, switches, firewalls, etc., and then delivers comprehensive visibility at network core, edge, data center, and even cloud. One more feature that needed to be mentioned here is encrypted traffic analytics, or ETA. This capability of Stealthwatch is to analyze encrypted traffic without any decryption. And this allows organizations to, first of all, detect threat in encrypted traffic, and secondly, perform cryptographic compliance to know how much of their digital businesses uses strong encryption and to audit for policy violations. Now let's talk about our integration. What problem does ISE and Stealthwatch integration solve? So by integrating Stealthwatch and ISE, you can see a myriad of details about network traffic, users, and devices. And instead of just a device IP address, Cisco ISE delivers other key details, including like username, device type, location, the services being used, and as well when and how the device accesses the network. With the combination of this network visibility of Stealthwatch and security context of ISE, you can detect threats faster and respond faster within a few minutes. And on this slide, we can see the following situation. So we have our corporate network, which is sending information to Stealthwatch. We can see this NetWall arrow. And then Stealthwatch detected some flow anomaly from Mary's device, and then inform ISE about that. So Cisco Stealthwatch alerts the Identity Service Engine to contain the compromised endpoint. And ISE then automatically pushes an enforcement instruction to router, switch, firewall, or even wireless controller. And this happens through the adaptive network control function in ISE, which we'll discuss further in our demo. So basically, the host will be quarantined and the threat will be contained. The main idea of the why should we care about this integration, and this idea will come through all integrations, I believe, today, that we can protect something if we cannot find it or visualize it. So we can protect what we cannot see. And with Stealthwatch and ISE integration, you can achieve the following. So first of all, network visibility, because Cisco Stealthwatch system collects and analyzes network from your routers, switches, firewalls, as I mentioned previously, and then delivers this comprehensive visibility at the network core, edge, data center, and even cloud. Second point that you can achieve is unified access control. As with the Stealthwatch and ISE, you can create, enforce, and monitor role-based access control policies throughout the entire network, all from one place. Third point is actionable security intelligence, because you can use the entire network as a huge sensor and enforcer by turning massive amounts of data from existing network infrastructure into actionable security intelligence. And the last point, for sure, you can achieve dramatically improved incident response and forensics. Because Stealthwatch and ISE help you quickly identify the source of an incident. When Stealthwatch detects anomalous traffic, it can send an alert to Cisco ISE to automatically quarantine the user. And for now, I believe it's time for our demo, where we will demonstrate what do you need to do for ISE and Stealthwatch integration, and what tasks we can solve with this integration. And for that, I can ask my colleague Ruben to share the screen.
All right, I believe Ruben has the ball now, so we should be all set there.
Tell me if you can see my screen.
Yes, you can.
Looks perfect.
Okay, I'll start the recording.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So basically, first of all, we need to think about communication with Stealthwatch and ISE and authentication between them. And we need to think about certificates. So our first step is to add trusted CA to our Stealthwatch. CA, which will be trusted by our Stealthwatch system and ISE as well. So here we're adding our certificate from the CA. Apply changes, and we need to wait a bit. And once we added the certificate of CA, we need to think about identity certificate of Stealthwatch itself. So our next step will be to generate CSR from our Stealthwatch, sign it with the trusted CA, and put the certificate back. Now we're waiting for changes applied. Okay, now compliance is up. Okay, and in order to generate CSR, we need to think about these two fields. We have SSL TLS appliance identity and additional SSL TLS client identities. So first option, appliance identity, we don't need to touch it because these certificates are used for communication between call collectors and sensors. So we need to play with additional SSL TLS client identities, and you can see informational notes here that this certificate will be used for instance, ISE communication here. And we need to generate CSR, organization, its name, the usual steps for CSR generating. Okay. Once CSR is generated, we will get the file. We copy content and send it to our CA. We will miss these points, but we just send it to our CA certificate, CA server, sign it, and then we get our certificate back. And then we need to upload it on our Stealthwatch. Okay. Okay. So, and then we need to apply our changes and wait. Okay, so this small preparation part from Stealthwatch is done. Let's check what is going on our ISE itself and what should be configured from ISE perspective. So first of all, we need to check as well certificates that this CA is added to our trusted store and trusted certificate. So we can see here the same CA root certificate. As well, we need to check certificate which will be used for pxread, and we can see here. Okay, under deployments, we need to check that the pxread service actually enabled. And we go to deployment, check our ISE node, and check the box with pxread. So yes, it's enabled. And go to services. And for now, as you can see, yes, on settings, we need to check this point about automatically adding certificates. Okay, so from my perspective, we checked our prerequisites, and now it's time to actually configure our ISE Stealthwatch configuration from Stealthwatch side. So we specify here the name, certificate which we'll be using, IP address of our ISE pxread node, and username. So username here is how Stealthwatch system will be described on ISE. So we can see this name on this list from ISE. Like put something like SMC, and we need to choose our integration options. So adaptive network control, HDT to sharing these bindings, IP to HDT, and user sessions for sharing passive identity context. So we save. And wait a bit. Wait till status will be green. Okay, so status is green, which means it's successfully done operation. And let's go on our ISE, and we can see after refresh that our Stealthwatch system is appeared here. So for now, in order to actually say something to Stealthwatch to do something, we need to configure policy, adaptive network control policies. And for that, we add our Stealthwatch device to ANC group. And now it's time to configure policies itself, because without any policies, basically we cannot say anything and we cannot make anything to do. So our first policy will be like suspicious. And here we can create several options. Every time it depends what you will configure on your authorization policy and what result should be provided. For now, we go through this stage. And we can see that the result of the policy will be suspicious users. And for now, let's check what is done from Stealthwatch side. So here we can see some host. You can see IP address of this host, and we can see that this host is doing some suspicious activity. In our case, it's crypto mining. From here, we can find some additional information, like IP address, for instance, for how long this activity is performed, and so on. I hope. Yeah. On this window, you can see that policy violation counter, data hoarding, and so on. We can see communication during the last hours, whom this host was communicating. And yeah, for instance, we can see that for 4 hours, like, duration of this virus activity was performed by this host. And for now, what can we do with this host once we find out this suspicious activity? And we're interested in this host summary part of the window, and especially in ISE ANC policy. So we can edit this and assign policy which we configured on our ISE in order to contain this suspicious host. So we can see here is our ISE. and we choose the policy. Policy, save it. So once Stealthwatch found out some suspicious activity, it will alert ISE, and ISE will initiate change of authorization, and then new authorization profile will be assigned to this suspicious host. And we can see on ISE, like Fox operations, our Larry user was like employee permit access. Authorization profile was assigned to this, but once we notice some suspicious activity, change of authorization was sent, and for now Larry got suspicious workers authorization profile. So basically by that we can paint this malicious or suspicious host and contain the threat. And for now I believe the video is done. Ruben, can you please stop it? Yeah. Thank you. And let's proceed with the content. And yes, for sure, here we as well prepare some useful links for your reference. I believe you can find all these links with the configuration guides and some video content on WebEx chat window. And now it's time to know the result of our second poll question. Matt, can you please announce them for us?
Thank you so much, Sergey. And yeah, I'll be sure to share those links on that last slide in the chat window in just a couple moments here once we finish up the poll bit here. And so the question for number 2 was, how do you contain a threat? And it looks like the top 2 answers that were basically split almost evenly. The top answer is the manual process currently, with the next very closely following that is an automatic system as well. So that's those are the two top answers. And then no protection in place and never done, never happened. Very low number of folks responded to those options.
Actually, it's a great result if there are no replies like on this no, never, or something like that. Yeah. That's good. So let's proceed then with our next poll question for today. Poll question number 3. Usually around how much time will it take for you to find a threat and contain it? I believe for now a new WebEx polling window should appear. And please select your answer, please.
Yep, that's all set. Thank you so much, Sergey. And I'll go ahead and get those reference links posted in the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you. And for now, let's continue. And for now, let's talk about new integration, Firepower and Firewall integration with ISE. And as well, a couple of words about Firepower itself before we're talking about integration. As Cisco Firewall provides intelligent control points everywhere with unified policy and threat visibility. Since preventive measures will never be 100% effective, your firewall should also have advanced capabilities to quickly detect advanced malware if it evades your frontline defenses. As threats and networks become more and more complex nowadays, it's imperative to have the right tools to protect your data, applications, and networks. And Cisco Firewall have these capabilities, power, and flexibility that you need to stay one step ahead of the threats. As mentioned before, you can't protect something if you cannot see it. So you need to monitor what is happening on your network at all times. Then only you can spot bad behavior and stop it fast. And Cisco Firewall will provide a holistic view of activity and full contextual awareness. The current industry standard time to detect a threat is between 100 to 150 days, and that is far too long. And with Cisco Firewall, you can detect threats in seconds and actually can find the presence of successful breach within hours or minutes. So you can prioritize alerts for which you can take swift and precise action to eliminate the threats. And your next generation firewall should not only be like a standalone device, it should communicate and work together with the rest of your security architecture. So actually, there is time for NG Firewall to shine because it seamlessly integrates with other tools and automatically shares threat information, event data, policy, and contextual information with email, web, endpoint, and network security tools. Now let's talk about integration. What about integration itself and what problem does it solve? ISE and Firepower integration. First of all, we need to think about Cisco Rapid Threat Containment. It's a Cisco security solution that utilizes the capabilities of Firepower Management Center, or FMC, and Cisco ISE in order to detect and automatically contain malware with a set of integrated and vendor-supported detection, visibility, and enforcement technologies. So when FMC, or like Firepower, sees some indicators of compromise, certain snort IPS signatures of NG Firewall are fired, or malware is discovered through ARM, for instance, Cisco Firepower Management Center alerts the ISE in order to contain the compromised endpoints. And ISE then automatically pushes an enforcement instruction to a router, switch, firewall, or wireless controller. So this happens through the adaptive network control, the same idea as with Stealthwatch. And on this slide, you can see actually the following situation. So we have our corporate network, and NG Firewall detects some threat from Joy's device. And Firepower informs ISE that, okay, we have some malware or threat there. And Cisco ISE will initiate change of authorization, and new authorization profile says that this Joy device will be quarantined. And by that, we will contain this threat. Let's check it. Okay, not yet. A couple of more words about Cisco threat containment. With this rapid threat containment solution, where NG Firewall integrates with Cisco ISE, we can actually bring down threat containment time to few seconds, not days or even hours. So the time in order to find the threat and contain it. When we're talking about values you can get with these ISE and Firepower integrations, we need to think about the following. So first of all, identity awareness and control. As Cisco ISE is uniquely positioned to be a source of passive identity due to a variety of reasons, and as a multi-vendor security ecosystem, it can connect subscribers like Firepower Management Center to third-party identity providers like Active Directory, Splunk, etc. in order to share identities, and that we can use further in order to build access control policies. Second point here is that you can improve threat visibility and speed up threat containment, because when you recognize a security event, you can take immediate action to stop it by directing ISE to contain the device from your analysis platform. You can also automate the responses, so you don't have to spend time on threats that are clearly identified. As well, you can change users' access privileges before or after they get on the network based on their threat score. And this flexibility allows you to protect critical data while limiting the impact to your users' productivity. And the last point, for sure, you can reduce complexity and costs, because you can organize all relevant threat information on one analysis platform instead of having to conduct lengthy investigations, traversing from system to system, jump from one console to another. And it's easier to see and understand threats and vulnerabilities on a single product. One platform, less complexity, less operation cost, and minimum damage or no damage cost at all post the incident. And for now, I believe it's time for our demo. Ruben, can you please share the second video, please? With ISE and Firepower integration. And during this demo, we will discuss two scenarios. First is building access control policy and using user identity information. And Ruben, can you please press stop now? Yeah, thank you. So the first scenario will be about building access control policy when we're trying to block SSH for users who belongs to HR group, and you can see it on the screen. Ruben, can you please play? Thank you. And in order to get information about users and their groups, we need to have Firepower and ISE integration. In order to integrate our Firepower device and ISE, we need to think as well about certificates. So the same steps as Stealthwatch integration. So we choose Identity Services and pick Identity Service Engine, where we provide here host name or IP address of our ISE. As well, we need to add here trusted CA certificate, which both ISE and Firepower will trust. And once we add trusted certificate, we also need to think about identity certificate for Firepower itself. So these steps absolutely identical to Stealthwatch. Well, first of all, trusted CA, then certificate for the system. Once it's done, we can test our connection. And okay, test is successful. Now we check some logs if there is a need. Click OK, save, and save our changes. And for now, here we use some simulation of the switch to generate some traffic. And then we will test different users if it's possible for them to connect via SSH, or they should be blocked because they're hitting our access control policy rule, which we created for HR users. And for now, we're going to test users. The first one will be ERA, which is not in HR group, and we're trying to perform SSH connection. And we can see that connection is allowed. But if we will try Harry, which is from HR, and as we remember, our access control policy is for HR, we can see that connection is blocked. Second scenario is about rapid threat containment. So now, okay, Ruben, can you please the video? Yeah, thank you. So second scenario is based on correlation policy on Firepower. This policy will trigger, okay, on our scenario, we will trigger our correlation policy once we will find out any malware on the host. And then we will build access control policy for the host, which will be in quarantine group, in order to block such connections from them. Ruben, can you please play again? Okay, thank you. So, as I mentioned, the correlation policy will trigger once we'll find some malware on our device. And access control policy will be the following. So we block SSH connection from host, which will be in quarantine group. So like you can see the name block quarantine systems. And regarding our quarantine group, so we will receive identity tag from ISE, which is configured there with different identity tags. And based on our authorization profile for quarantine hosts. So our rule will be based on the security group tag. If it will be quarantine tag, we will block SSH connection. Okay. As well, we enable login for this in order to check the activity later. So policy is configured, can save it and deploy. Deploy, okay. And once deployment is done, we're ready to perform our test again. We'll check our, again, we need to launch our jump boxes as switches, and then we'll check our users activity. First, we'll perform the test for user without malware on his PC, and SSH connection should be allowed. As we can see, it's allowed for now. But what if we download some malware file on this device and user machine, and we'll see how Firepower will react and how ISE will react. So we download malware file for the same user machine, and we try again initiate some SSH connection from this user machine. Okay, trying to do it again. And for now, connection is blocked. So basically, what happened? First of all, our correlation policy on Firepower triggered because we found out malware on this PC, and then ISE sent a change of authorization as it was initiated from ISE, and then our device PC was getting authorized profile with the quarantine system HDT tag. And then next step, X-control policy is working. We can see that for device with the HDT tag quarantine systems, we need to block SSH connection. And after we download some malware file, our second attempt to initiate SSH was blocked by X-control policy. And I believe that's it for the video. Ruben, can you please stop it here? Thank you. Okay. Let's proceed with the content. And yeah, for sure, as well as for Stealthwatch, we also prepared some useful links with the content for NG Firewall and ISE Integrations. And these links should be provided to you on Webex chat. And it's time to find out the result of our third poll question.
All right, let's take a look here. So this one definitely had a clear leader for it, so that's awesome. Again, the question was usually around how much time will it take for you to find a threat and contain it? And the overwhelming response was 1 to 6 hours, with just a few other folks responding in the other options of less than an hour, around 24 hours, or more than a day. And a couple folks with never done, never happened. So that's all great feedback. Thank you so much, everybody. But definitely 1 to 6 hours is the clear winner right now.
That's good news. That's nice audience here.
Yeah.
That's great. So for now, we discussed ISE introduction a bit, ISE and Stealthwatch integrations, and NG firewall integration. And for now, it's time to find out what will be with AMP and TC-NAC. And for that, I would like to pass the ball to my colleague, Ruben. Thank you.
Let's see if sure that Ruben has the ball properly. And yep, okay, thanks, Ruben. Sorry about that.
Thank you, guys. Okay. So, as we discussed before on the previous 2 integrations done by Sergey, so we discussed about integrating ISE with Stealthwatch to get network anomalies, to see traffic west, east and west. We saw the perimeter with rapid threat containment on the firepower side. Now it's time to see how we can actually manage these threats at the endpoint level with advanced malware protection. And let's see how we can contain threats in a simple and effective way. To begin with, we're going to start with an overview as we did for the previous products. So we're going to do a brief short nutshell of AMP. So as you know, Cisco AMP is an intelligence-powered integrated enterprise-class advanced malware analysis and protection solution. It shares intelligence across network, web, email, and endpoints to see once and block everywhere. So here there's a concept that we usually call AMP everywhere. And AMP everywhere represents 3 major categories, I would say. One of them will be AMP for endpoints, which we'll see on the next slide. We also have the capability of AMP for networks, as it covers Meraki, ISR routers, firewalls, FTDs, and more. And we also have AMP for emails and web that covers ESA, CS, WSA, and Umbrella. And this capability allows your organizations to basically register your AMP-enabled devices in the AMP endpoints console. So in this way, those devices can be seen and they can be queried for sample observations. The same way that you already do for AMP for endpoints console, that it's providing for the endpoints, you can also get for all these devices as well. This integration will also allow you to correlate file propagation data across all the threat vectors in the single user interface. If you think about file and device trajectory, that's the place that I'm talking about. So Cisco Advanced Malware Protection also goes a step further than most malware detection tools, most of the malware detection tools, by continuously monitoring every file in your network. And if Cisco AMP detects some malicious behavior, it will help you to remediate it quickly. We're going to see on the next slide for the endpoint perspective. So when we deploy AMP for endpoints to our endpoints, it goes in the form of a connector, which we call AMP connector. AMP connector can be deployed on a multitude of operating systems, going from Windows, Linux, Mac OS, iOS, or Android. And in the single security agent, this connector, we are able to prevent, detect, and respond to threats quickly. So it provides the complete protection against the most advanced threats. Not only AMP will prevent breaches and block malware at the point of entry, but it also rapidly detect, contain, and remediate advanced threats if they evade the frontline defenses and get inside. So we actually have full visibility across the full attack continuum. We're going to see later on how a threat manages to get in as a problem and how ISE together can stop these attacks to happen. So how they can complement each other. So on the left side, which is usually our problem, our initial problem, is we are actually seeing a breach scenario. So we have a computer that was actually infected by a malware infection, and this malware on its behavior seeks to find another devices that are vulnerable to this specific threat. In our misfortune, actually, we have more devices that were vulnerable to that, and by the end, our infection actually spread. So we actually had a huge breach that the threat was able to spread laterally across the network and infect more machines. As a result, we have compromised endpoints that were able to spread malware by exploiting known vulnerabilities. What will be the solution for this, you may ask? So in cooperation together, ISE with AMP over TC-NAC, we are able, with the Cisco AMP cloud, to configure and send real-time high-fidelity indicators of compromise. And those threat-detected events will be sent to Cisco ISE to dynamically control the access level of the endpoint or a user based on the malware status. So in this case, we can stop to spread this threat, so we can contain the threat and remediate. And then the host that you see on the right side, he was vulnerable in the beginning before this analysis, but after this analysis, it was contained on the isolation VLAN, it was remediated, and it was bring clean again back to the network. So we can save time, bring our machines back into the deployment clean, and isolating threats, avoiding any further damage or any type of compromises on our organization. That's the greatest value here. Moving next to the why we should care and why this integration fits together. So as you know, as part of ISE, we have a feature called posture, and we are already applying some posture and compliance checks. If it's the case that we are already applying some compliance posture and checks, we can also complement that on top by adding the TC-NAC and with the compromised status data that tells the endpoint's posture from outside of the controls that we already have in place, based on information that is brought by the cloud, by the IOCs, we can have this extra layer of threat visibility. Of course, this extra layer of visibility is also provided by our collective intelligence that we have. So we are leveraging here intelligence from Talos. From the people who's not familiar with Talos, it's the single largest commercial threat intelligence team in the world, comprised of world-class researchers, analysts, and engineers, and it's part of Cisco. But not only that, but we also leverage other open source resources, APIs, VirusTotal, and we can use all that information together to complement on top of the posture. This service can be used separate from the posture or together with the posture. So we can also have two extra things, which is expanded control, as I mentioned before. We can actually have TC-NAC together with posture or solo deploy TC-NAC. And together, all these components will actually give us a faster way to respond in real time policy updates based on threat metrics. So we get a threat, we can apply in real time a policy and contain that problem. So let me just show you how it works rather than my words, because a video speaks more and a demo speaks more than words. So let me try to share here my screen for the integration. Hopefully you're seeing my screen. Can you confirm, please?
Hi, Sergey. It looks perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So before we begin with the integration, and speaking about the integration, let me just give you a comment on some prerequisites that we should have first before we begin with this integration. So first of all, we are integrating Identity Services Engine with advanced malware protection. So we need to have an account on advanced malware protection. So wherever resides your cloud, EU, North America, APGC, you should have an AMP account. Then you need to have the proper entitlement on ISE and AMP cloud. And of course, we need to have basic connectivity. So in case that you have a firewall blocking some ports, we need to have those ports unblocked. Please refer that to the documentation to know exactly the ports. And these communications for the endpoints should be able to reach out the cloud via HTTPS. So all basic connectivities checks should be done. If all these prerequisites check and we are set, we can then proceed with the integration itself. To begin with, we are going to jump to our primary administration nodes. We want to make sure that we have under administration system deployment, we want to make sure that we have the TC-NAC enabled. As I showed on the previous screen, we want to make sure that TC-NAC is enabled. We'll move to TC-NAC to start to configure our connector. Here we add a new connector for the vendor instance. We support 5 different, as you can see, 5 different vendors on the screen. AMP, Quali, Tenable Security, Rapid7, Expose, and CTA, Cognitive Threat Analytics as well. But for today's purpose, we're going to configure AMP, as I said. We'll pick AMP, and we give to the instance name a name that should be meaningful. In this scenario, it will be called demo, but you should use a meaningful name. We apply those changes. We will wait for status to be configurable. So at this stage, we see that status changed to ready to be configured. Here at this stage is when we are going to start to configure the details of the cloud for the AMP side. So we click on ready to configure, and it will ask for a few things. First, it will ask for a SOX proxy. In case that you have some in use, you need to fill these fields. In case if not, you can just proceed by clicking next. This step, as it says, is optional. And I'll just move a bit forward. The next step is to pick the cloud where your account sits. As I mentioned before, US, EU, APGC. And as soon as you pick your cloud and you press next, you will be presented with a link on your ISE GUI that you should click, and that link will redirect you, will pivot you to your console of AMP for endpoints. So when we will click on this event here, on this link, we will be pivot into the AMP for endpoints console. So we are loading into the AMP for endpoints. And here we are building our connector. So this is our IRF connector that will stream event, that will be for exporting stream events. And we want to pick the groups that we have configured on AMP that have some endpoints under them, and will be basically the ones that we want to control and manage together with this integration. So we are picking the protect ones that we have set in place, that already have some controls and tuned. and we'll save these groups. I'll just move a bit forward because after we save those groups, we'll be redirected again to ISE to finish our configuration and finally save the connector. The next step will be it will show as active, and this means by now that the integration was successful. So we are contacting the cloud and the TC-NAC connector is in place. The next step from this side will be to actually prepare the scenario to test and check if we have everything in place to begin with our threat detection. But before that, we can also go to accounts and applications and check that we have our connector present there as IRF. And we can see that we have the data for our ISE connector. It's possible here in future if you want to disregister it by any reason. Maybe you change your cloud or something and you want to disregister, you can, feel free. Then you just need to do the same procedure to add a new one. But it's possible if you wish so. And it's also possible in real time to edit the groups. Like by any chance, if you want to edit the groups, press edit and add an extra groups as you wish. So without digressing, we have the list of our endpoints, and for purpose of detection, we're going to use this lab demo machine. And this is going to be our endpoint where we're going to test the detections. So what will happen from now on is basically this lab demo machine will be compromised with a file. And then we will see on ISE if that threat was detected or not. As it goes by now, we can pivot to Home Threat tab and verify that our environment is clean. It's completely clean. There's no compromises. There's no top threats. We have a clean environment. And we are going to do an infection in purpose. We're going to compromise our endpoint in purpose to let you know how these detections will work. But before that, it's also important to do a few things first. So as you saw before on Stealthwatch, for instance, and the other integrations we did before, everything begins with adaptive network control. So we need to have some policies in place before we test our controls, because if no policy will be matched, doesn't matter if your integration is in place or not, because there's no detection happening. So we need to create a set of policies to detect these behaviors. In this case, we're just going to create an exception, and this exception will be used for quarantine, and we're going to call it isolation. So I'll just move it a few seconds forward. So we're going to call it isolation or isolate in this case, and the action will be to quarantine. After we create this policy, we need to go to policy sets and actually apply it on our global exceptions. So we are using the default policy set, and we will add this policy under global exceptions. We'll create a new entry for TC-NAC, and we will call it, we're going to give a meaningful name, basically call it TC-NAC, with the condition that the session will match an attribute called ANC policy. For result or profile, it's going to be deny access, and we want to match a security group called quarantine systems. So we'll begin to pick the session attribute, and we'll pick ANC policy from the dictionary, and we want to equal it to the isolate policy that we create before to make sure that we match this event in case of detection. we'll put on use. And then for profiles, we will put deny access, and security group will put quarantine systems. I'll just move a bit forward. So deny access, quarantine systems. Whatever this policy will be matched, the machines will be moved into the security group. I'll just move a bit forward to the scenario, to the machine itself. So this is the lab endpoint that you saw before on the AMP dashboard, as you can see for the identification, lab demo 10 Windows 10 machine. And here, this machine will be compromised in purpose for you guys to check how the detection works. So we are going to download an ACAR sample, which is a malicious SHA file. So this ACAR file is malicious. It's a malicious file and is basically used to test anti-malware software. And it's signed in purpose to be malicious. So this SHA is already well known by the global intelligence. And wherever this user tries to download it, AMP is already taking an action first. So the user is saving the file, tries to go to execute it, but he already doesn't have access to that file because AMP already took an action first. So we are going to dashboard here on AMP for Endpoints console, and we're going to check the events. We can pivot from multiple sources, but in this case, we're going to use the dashboard, and we're going to events to filter the list of the events that happen to this ACAR file that we downloaded. So as you can see from the name of the file, as you recall, it was called ACAR6. There's a duplicated file. And those events those threats were detected and they were quarantined successfully from AMP side. So we are able to contain this threat before the user actually did something with that file. The next step is to verify from ISE side if ISE received this information, this streamlined information. I will just move forward and pivot back to ISE, and I'm gonna refresh the dashboards. And as you can see, I can see one compromised endpoint. And if I click on the top threats chart, I can pivot directly into the compromise. It will take a bit to load. And then on the details, as you can see, I can see the MAC address of that Windows 10 machine, severity of the threat, the confidence level of detection, and the threat detected event. So I can, from here, apply some ANC policy directly. So the investigator can directly apply an action over adaptive network control. It can go click on the endpoint, go to the drop option of ANC. It will be in the bit, and assign a policy and enforce a policy assignment of isolation, and then assign the isolation to this particular endpoint. So in this scenario, we'll be able to contain this threat. It will not spread around. This user will be isolated on this network segment that was created for this policy. And we successfully contain it. We'll then remediate this machine, and we should be able to bring it back to work as soon as we apply the remediation on it. So this concludes the demo. There's nothing to look forward here. It's basically the conclusion. Let's get back to our materials. And here's some also links that can talk about this integration that will be shared with you later. And it's time to introduce as well the pool 4, which is how network access control for your users and endpoints is getting enforced. What should put you the options there in the WebEx, and we will continue.
Thank you so much, Ruben. That poll question is now open.
Okay, great. So moving forward to other hot topic here, DNA Center. So let's proceed. So DNA Center, here we are talking about Cisco Digital Network Architecture Center, which is a powerful network controller and management dashboard that can help you to take charge of your network, optimize your Cisco investment, and lower your IT spending. The cool thing about DNA Center is that now we will have a policy that will follow you everywhere, wherever you are located. So, and that is actually what we're trying to do with deliver consistent experience. So we are trying to apply a policy that will follow you everywhere, wherever you are connected via wireless or you're connected via wireless. And at the same time, we are trying to enhance the security and compliance by keeping the user and device and application traffic separate with end-to-end segmentation. At the same time, we are trying to agilize to give some more agility and efficiency via automation of doing the user policies and network provisioning to help teams to have less work overhead. And the best part of all of this, I would say, it's the gain of network insights. So we get a better visibility and we can actually transform the network data into actionable insights. So we have a lot of data that we collect via advanced artificial intelligence and machine learning that help us proactively to monitoring, troubleshoot, and to optimize the network. It also is possible to integrate with third-party systems for more improved operational processes. And basically, in a nutshell, it tries to what we call nowadays, it tries to move your network into an intent-based network. That's the direction that the networks are moving nowadays. And how we correlate ISE integration with DNA Center. So beginning first, once it's deployed to proper design and provision, DNA Center will know the network better than any other tool or solution. In this case, SDA access on DNA Center is responsible for the automation of the device's configuration and also offers the central point of management where we can configure all the policies on DNA. ISE will keep being ISE as it is. So ISE will still be responsible for the AAA part and to distribute the scalable group policies. So if you have some micro or macro segmentation already using TrustSec before you do this integration, it will also continue to be the same afterwards, after the integration. So these groups will be pushed into DNA as well. And then on DNA, you can also be doing the policies, and all these changes will be pushed together through PX Read and REST APIs. And to have consistency between these two devices and these two solutions, we need to have this integration in place. So in the end, what we are trying to do is one tool for network management and network access control, or as it is called, identity group-based access control with automation of policies in the end. So a brief couple of words on that and why we should care on this integration is we are moving nowadays into the zero trust security model. And when we move into zero trust security, we are trying to help to gain insights into users and devices. and to identify threats and maintain control over all connections across your network, including Internet of Things devices, such as cameras, manufacturing equipment, you name it, any IoT device. And then we have the part of simplified management and software-defined access. So we are thinking about, at this point, into a solution that will simplify your LAN, your wireless LAN, your wide area network deployments. We are trying to increase the network reliability, reducing risk, and enable, of course, faster service delivery. All of this will actually lead you to increase your business continuity and also to reduce your operations cost. And on top of that, as I mentioned before, we are trying to simplify as much as possible the device management and the network access control through a single pane of glass. And again, as I mentioned before, for AMP, there's nothing better to explain something rather than a video besides my words. So my words by themselves don't speak enough. So let's go for a demo, and I will try to briefly guide you through this integration. This integration will touch in similar topics as we touched on firepower and on Stealthwatch, meaning that we're going to talk again on certificates and certificate provisioning. But I'll be shortly on this part, because before we begin this integration as well, we should pay attention to these prerequisites. So Cisco ISE and Cisco DNA Center are running compatible versions in our demo. What I want to tell here is you should all the time check compatibility matrix. Online, we have our website that shows that, and we should be running the recommended version with the recommended patch level. ISE CLI and GUI should have same username and password, so they should match. We need to have the open firewall ports for communication between ISE and DNA Center, and we need to be able to reach from ISE DNA and from DNA ISE. So we need to have these basic prerequisites in place, and then we are okay and set to integrate. To quickly talk about this demo, I will be first pivoting into the ISE GUI. So let me just move here a bit the video. So first things first is currently I'm on ISE GUI, and at this part in time, the first initial step is to configure and have enabled the SSH service. So usually you can enable SSH when you're installing ISE on the setup, or you can in any time go to your CLI and do on the config mode and issue the command service SSHD enabled. So we want to make sure that we have SSH enabled because ISE will communicate with DNA Center over SSH, the same way that when you are connecting to a machine over SSH, you have the RSA key and fingerprints. That would be on the background what will happen between ISE and DNA Center. They need to have this trust. So next thing is to go to the deployment to make sure that we have pxread enabled, because this integration works via pxread as we saw in the diagrams before. As we can see here, we have enabled pxread. We can go again to administration and check pxread services just to make sure that pxread service is connected. As you saw on the previous screen, or even here, status green means we are connected. We need to do the automatically approved new certificate-based accounts as we did before for other integrations, same way, same location. We say NAC, yes, and we enable this setting. The next thing is we need to enable the external REST API. So we need to move to administration system settings, and we need to make sure that we have ERS settings enabled for read and write. Quite simple. Just press OK, save it again, and we have this thing set. Very important point here is if you are running a proxy by any chance, for the DNA communication, you want to bypass the proxy and you want to enter the IP address and the domains under the box that says bypass to avoid any problems. So that's the only point that I want to differentiate here on the screens. I will move it forward. And the next step is to check the certificates. So same way as we checked before, we want to check where our pxread role is in use. So in this case, we are actually using not the same way that we use on the Stealthwatch demo where we had the PQI. Here we are using self-signed certificates from ISE side, and we're going to use throughout this demo self-signed certificates. And we just want to make sure that we have our certificate in place and that is not going to expire soon. Very important as well to check. We have the certificate in place. I'll move it forward, and then we will pivot into DNA Center. On top right corner, there's this cogwheel that you want to click and go to System Settings. And then on the left, you want to pick Authentication and Policy Service as soon as you select the tab of Settings, and then configure the AAA ISE server. So we put the IP address of our node. We put the shared secret here. Keep in mind this shared secret will be used further on your network devices for the, in this case, for the radius protocol that we're going to configure here. We want to enable it. We'll specify the admin user, as I mentioned in the prerequisites, with this password, the full qualified domain name for your ISE node, and then for subscriber name, a meaningful name, as we did for Stealthwatch. Here we also want to give a name, and we did on Firepower. On DNA, we'll call it DNAC 96. It's like our meaningful name here. And we are going to apply this. And we are just, for now, configure radios. If you want to deploy TACACS as well, you can enable TACACS. But on this demo, we are just doing with radios for the authentications part. And we are applying these changes. So keep in mind here, we want to see a status result similar as we saw in the previous integrations. So we want to make sure that status is active. And when status is active, we are able to do a few checks. First, we can check on DNA Center on System 360 if our nodes are showing. As you can see here on the left, we only have one node, so it identifies primary and pxread. Both are available. They are healthy. We have everything set in place. And then when we pivot back to ISE in a future step, we should be able to go to pxread services, as we did on previous integrations, and we should be able to see the subscriber for DNA Center. So we have DNA 96 there, as you see, both entries. And what we want to check next is if the certificate of DNA is present on our trust store. So first of all, we are checking here for web clients. We can see the DNA Center entry here, and we can see the name for the certificate part, the attribute names, the common name attributes. So when we will go next to the trusted store on our ISE, we should be able to see there the certificate with the same authorized name. So we can see here the CN. This is the certificate that is in use for DNA C96. And this is also a validation that if you can see here on the details, that is from the DNA side. and we have everything set in place. The next step is, if I already have some TrustSec deployed, some micro and macro segmentation on my ISE before I have this integration, now I should be able to synchronize and get my scalable groups on DNA Center. So if I hit refresh, I should be able to see my scalable groups there. And this grants you all the integration was successfully and the information from ISE is being pushed properly to DNA Center. And now we are ready to, let's say, play from both sides. So we can start to do the policy here on DNA Center, applying the policies, and then have this synchronization across both platforms in a meaningful and proper way. Okay. We have some resources as well that will be shared with you about these integrations. And at this time, I'll pass to Matt to see the results from Pool 4. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Ruben. So let's see, it looks like the leading response for the question of how our network access control for your users and endpoints getting enforced is through ACLs. And the next option, very close to that, is group identity TrustSec based, with just a few folks marking no access control in place or not sure currently. So that's good. I think that's pretty good feedback, wouldn't you say?
It is. It is a very good feedback to see so much people actually applying TrustSec and group identity-based policies. It's good to hear, actually. Okay, so briefly a summary from our today's session. So an integrated security architecture enables automation and reduces the complexity, as we saw with our DNA Center part. The DNA Center is also a better way that you can leverage to control your network and your network access. One of the key things between ISE and Stealthwatch and their work together is that we need to have the idea of sense your network and secure your network through the traffic analysis for those malicious behaviors. Also, that rapid threat containment brings down the overall time of threat containment to a few seconds. And that also Cisco network access controls can be more powerful when played together with IMP for the TC-NAC purposes. So, as well, now we are open for questions. Feel free.
Thank you so much, Ruben. And I'm going to invite my colleague and the usual host of these webinars, Rigo Villa, back on to join the audio with us. And I believe, Rigo, you have a few questions that you have ready to ask, correct?
Yes, thank you so much, Matt. Thank you so much, Ruben and Sergey, for the excellent presentation. So we do have a couple of questions from our audience here. And as I take a look at what we have, I know we're running a little short in time already, but maybe we can squeeze in a couple of questions if you both don't mind. So let's see. For the first question we have is, any identity certificates involved in ISE and DNAC integration?
No, the certificates that we used for the integration was basically on the scenario that I represented. I used the self-signed certificate from ISE side that had the PXGrid role. You can actually have the PXGrid certificate alone just for the PXGrid purposes, if you wish so. And for that, if it's self-signed, it's just basically pushed from ISE and imported into the DNA Center. And in case that you actually use PQI, you need to sign this certificate for the PXGrid role. And then this trust will be established.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Let's see. Looks like we do have another question here. And that one is AMP subscription complementary with ISE TC-NAC?
So with ISE TC-NAC for the feature and the level that is being used on ISE, there are a few things to mention here. There is the AMP account that needs to be set in place before. So there is the need of having an acquired AMP account, and there is some specific bundles that, for instance, there is the AnyConnect bundle with AMP, but that are more specific details on that for those products. ISE itself has their own specific license scheme, but doesn't go into the subscription seats part. So there are some. If you have the license in place, if you are using the feature of TC-NAC, the license will be consumed under ISE for that feature, but also you need to have a seat on the AMP side of the house. You need to have a seat on the AMP cloud for that endpoint to actually get the cloud side of things. I'm not sure if it replied directly, but it's not just license from one side. It involves multiple products and small quirks here and there to actually have the full spectrum of the house working. So if it was a bit confusing, you can give me that contact of that person and I can bring that discussion offline, Rigo.
Sure, will do. Thank you so much, Ruben. All right, so thank you again for that. So we are a little bit over time, so we'll go ahead and conclude our live Q&A. I would like to give a very big thank you to our presenters, Sergey and Ruben, for speaking about this important topic with our audience. I hope that everyone found great value in the information and resources that were shared here today. I would also like to give a very big thank you to each and every one of our panelists for lending us a hand with all of the questions throughout the webinar. We really appreciate your support, as always. And just a quick reminder for our attendees that you will receive a short pop-up survey as soon as you exit the webinar. And we would be so grateful if you could just take a few minutes to complete it and let us know how you like today's presentation. We always look forward to receiving your valuable feedback. And again, for those of you who are interested in revisiting this session again, maybe you jumped on a little late, or maybe for those who might have jumped, had to leave the session early, we will have the recording available for on-demand viewing within about 5 business days after today. And for your reference, I will go ahead and post the ISE training videos page link in the chat window here in just a moment. That's where the recording will be located. However, you will also be receiving an email within about an hour or less that contains that very same link. So please do keep an eye on your email inbox for that. Thanks again to our presenter, to our panelists, and to all of our attendees for joining us here live today. I hope that you'll have a great rest of your day. Thank you. And
if you allow me, Rigo?
Yes.
Some last words before everyone disconnects. So please also keep in mind that we do have some resources about the journeys on ISE. You can go to cisco.com/ISE-CX and we can start your Cisco Services and Identity Services Engine journey there. Sorry for the speeding, but I don't want to keep your time. And also we have some resources that actually Rigo will share with you later on, where you can find more information around ISE. Thanks, and sorry if I stole your time.
No worries, Ruben. You did great. Thank you so much. And actually, the resources you just mentioned, I posted those in the chat window. So for our attendees, if you would like to have these resources, please feel free to copy them from the chat window and feel free to save them or bookmark them, and then you can refer to them at any time. Thank you so much, Ruben. And thanks again to for our audience for joining us here live. Everybody, please enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you so much.